Okay, it's time now for the Dan Williams Show here on WKAC. As always, our sponsors are Ken Hanna at Farmers Insurance, Witt's Barbecue, Jared Hester at Edward Jones, and Chick-fil-A. And now here's your host, Dan Williams.
Thank you, Tim. It's another beautiful day in Athens, Limestone County, even with a little rain. Capped off a beautiful weekend. Everybody got to get out in beautiful weather and do what they wanted to do. I didn't get on the pontoon this week. I tell you, I missed that. So we appreciate you listening in today. And we have a good show that I've been looking forward to for some time regarding the problems that people have in dealing with custody of children when parents are no longer together. And we have three guests with us in the studio today, which is a little bit unusual, but we got everybody in. Mark Davis, I think I don't know if you're the president or you head up the Alabama Family Rights Association.
Actually, I am the Director of Communications and Research.
Okay.
For the Alabama Family Rights Association. Tim Smith is our state president.
Okay, now I met Tim one time before. Yeah, and Tim is sort of local.
Yes, he's an indicator.
Okay, yeah. I know him, and I met with you and Tim at one point soon after I was elected to the legislature. We also have family law attorney Austin Burdick here to meet with us, and we're glad to have you on the show, Austin. And then our other guest is sort of a famous person around. It's State Senator Paul Sanford from Huntsville, represents the 7th District in the state legislature, the Senate for Madison County. We're glad to have you with us too, Paul.
I appreciate you having me. I'm famous for barbecue.
Yeah. Paul is famous for barbecue. He's a restaurant owner and businessman in the city of Huntsville, and he's a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America. I'm very impressed with that, and that we got to have a state senator that's a graduate of the Culinary Institute, and that's another show. We need to talk with you sometime about how you got into the restaurant business and the cooking part of your life here.
Born into it, and I'll be more than happy to come on and share some cooking tips for you.
Well, we'll do that at the first available opportunity we have. This is a very serious matter that we're going to talk about today. When we're talking about the custody of children and the problems that are associated with that, and I would probably think you could make a true statement that just about any custody case there's going to be problems associated with it. And I think we can also probably just say too that the person maybe that gets hurt most in these situations is the child itself or the children themselves. And I think probably the way to start out, Mark, give us a little indication of what the association is for and its goals and what you're trying to do.
Well, the Alabama Family Rights Association basically is about promoting fit parents being actively involved in their children's lives and educating the public regarding the constitutional aspects of fit parents and children having the parent-child relationship.
Well, let's get back. Do a lot of people think that when there's a divorce or separation of whatever happens in between parents, that one of them has to be fit and one of them is not fit? Is that sort of the way we come out of this thing?
I'll tell you, our U.S. Constitution and U.S. Supreme Court has indicated multiple times since 1925 that parents are presumed to be fit.
Yeah.
So the presumption is to start at fitness and work away from it.
But does that always hold true when you get into the court?
When there is a custody determination to be made by the courts, I don't even know if parental fitness is even considered at all.
But that seems to be what the big problem is, that as far as we're concerned with today, is that it seems to be when things go into our court system, I'm talking about the Alabama court system, that we run into the problem with always sort of designating someone fit and someone unfit, and the children go to the fit parent, and the parent that doesn't get the children is
Well,
not fit.
a lot of the child custody determinations in Alabama are made without the courts even giving the litigants a reason why. There's no written findings to indicate why a court ruled this way or the other, and that's largely unknown. And what happens is you have basically parents that lawyer up. And one of the first things, now Austin I don't think recommends this, but many of Alabama attorneys will tell a parent, if you go to them, first thing you do is you don't talk to the other parent.
Yeah.
And it's a downhill situation from there, and it creates strife, and the parents are at conflict for the rest of their natural lives, and that's detrimental to children.
Now, Mr. Burdick is a family law attorney. Austin, the people who deal with custody cases, I'm talking about the court people, the judges, what level is that? Is that circuit judges all the time in Alabama? How does that work?
Well, primarily, if you've got a couple that's divorced, in that kind of case where couples are divorcing, that's a circuit court judge every time. There are some circumstances where there are allegations of dependency, and in those kind of cases, they would start in the district court and the juvenile court. But primarily, most of the cases that have been referenced today, where we're talking about two parents that neither one of them really made any allegations of unfitness, then those all start in the circuit court.
So the most of these cases are circuit court, and then you always have the I suppose you call it the special judgeship, the children's courts and things that may be involved with other aspects of a child's life other than custody, the delinquency and things like that may not involve custody as such that we're talking about today. But what training? Is there any evidence that the circuit court judges that deal with these situations here have the ability to do what they're doing?
Frankly, no. There's not really any requirement of any kind of training under the law as it stands today.
In other words, you run for circuit judge just like you run for the legislature.
Yeah, you run for circuit judge. For instance, I live up in the Bessemer division of Jefferson County, or I guess down. I'm up here in the northern part of the state, so. But I live down in the Bessemer division, and there's 4 circuit judges in that division of Jefferson County. And each one of those circuit judges handles 10% of the domestic relations cases. And because they like domestic relation cases so little, they also appointed one of the district court judges as a special circuit court judge so they could dump 60% of the divorce cases on him. So that kind of tells you what level of priority these cases fall into, at least where I live.
So a lot of them, they don't want to deal with a case that involves custody.
They don't want to deal with it. The facts are messy. The litigants that are involved in the case aren't really litigants, but they're moms and dads, and so they're very passionate about everything that's going on. And the problem is these judges are uncomfortable handling it. To be honest with you.
Well, I can understand that. If I'm a judge here, and a mother and a father come to the point that they're going to divorce, I mean, there's going to be some passionate feelings there between those two people, and I don't necessarily want to get involved in that too, because you're going to make a decision about where a child goes. Maybe that's why they like to slough these things off. It's just maybe a lack of having the fortitude and the training and everything to do the things.
Yeah, I think that's true. They're not trained as social workers. They're not trained in sociology. They're not trained in psychology. They're not trained in interpersonal relationships. They're really not trained in any of these things except for the law.
Yeah.
And I mean, think about it. If you had a family problem and you needed to talk to somebody and you wanted them to understand what was going on, is the first person you'd think of an attorney?
No.
I don't think so. You'd think about your minister.
Sure.
You'd think about a whole lot of other people. You'd think about your daddy, your mama. The last person you'd want to call is an attorney, and that's who we have as family court judges.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, these problems are because we give family court judges more discretion than they have training to handle.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'd like to jump in here and say that I know from talking to hundreds of parents throughout the state that many times the attorneys themselves create the conflict. They encourage the parents not to communicate. They go and file motions. I had a member of the current Alabama legislature tell me that when he got divorced, that his attorney told him to go commit domestic violence on his ex-spouse, and his ex-spouse attorney told her to do the same thing. So now they have on their permanent record DV filings because the attorneys told them to do that. But here's the novel concept. If we had the courts to be required to make a judicial determination of parental fitness, the very first thing, the parents may not like one another, but as long as each parent is fit, then the court is mandated to treat each parent equal at the bar of justice. And going to say, hey, we're not going to get into what I call this Jerry Springer, he said, she said, and this trash and that trash, and say, look, you know what? There's no findings of parental unfitness by clear and convincing evidence. I've got to treat both of you equal at the bar of justice. That's going to cut out a lot of these judges that aren't trained, that don't like hearing these cases. That's going to eliminate a whole lot of the issues just right at the get-go.
Well, if we look at it from that perspective, when this first comes to a judge's court, and he looks at Mark and he looks at Mark's spouse, and he said, well, they're both, they're impassioned about this and they're mad about something, but they're both pretty good people. Is that the point where you would say, well, just we award joint custody and then work from there?
I think the presumption needs to be starting at a 50-50 standpoint and working away from it. And of course, you're going to have, if there's situations where there's parental unfitness and there are true reasons not to have it, then give the court authority to look at that. And sure, that's where it needs to start.
I'd like to ask Senator Sanford, how many contacts do you have with people who are concerned with custody cases? Do you have a lot?
I get a lot. I get probably 4 to 5 emails a week about these types of situations, and some of them are absolutely horrible. Some of them are just talking about just wanting to have access to their children because the ex-spouse is denying their visitation rights based on the court order. I have people calling that are upset that the courts mandated that they provide health insurance to the children, and they feel like they're treated differently than, say, myself and my wife that are married. I'm not mandated to provide health care to my children, but if we go to the courts and we were to get a divorce, then I could then be mandated just based on some judicial rule that the court's been allowed to impose on me. I have a great issue with that. That's probably one of my greatest concerns, is that the court is stepping outside the boundaries of just the statutory law and implementing that, but they're implementing rules themselves that I believe are having a constitutional conflict with the citizens of the state. So that's one of the reasons I've really got more involved in this process and with this issue is to try to help families be treated fairly, whether they're married or they're divorced. And the court is not showing that fairness. There's definitely a leaning of unfairness towards divorced parents, and the argument that you get is not a good one.
Okay, let's hold it right there, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes with our guest. We have a break coming up, and we'll be back with the Alabama Family Rights Association organization.